Imagine it's 12,000 years ago. You're walking a ridge at dusk, and in the distance, you see a figure, another person, someone you don't know. Every muscle in your body goes tight, not because they've done anything, they're just standing there, but your heart is already pounding. Your eyes are already hunting for their hands, for a weapon, for the others who might be hiding behind them. The wind is the only sound. You could turn and run, but you've already been seen. You're not being paranoid, you're being smart. Because for almost all of human history, another human being wasn't company. They were the most dangerous thing you could meet. More dangerous than any lion, any bear, any cliff edge in the dark. Now, come back to today. You walk out your door and you brush past 100 strangers before lunch. On the train, in the shop, on the street, any one of them could hurt you. And the thought doesn't even cross your mind. So what changed? Why were ancient humans so violent that a stranger meant death? And why did that stop with you? Here's the first uncomfortable truth. Violence isn't a human invention. We inherited it, and it's still in us. Researchers once measured lethal violence across more than 1,000 mammal species, how often an animal is killed by its own kind. For mammals as a whole, the number is tiny. About 3 in every 1,000 deaths, 0.3%. But you're not an average mammal, you're a primate. And at the root of the primate family tree, that number jumps almost eightfold to around 2%. The same 2% shows up in the models for early humans. We were born into a nastier branch of the animal world, and some of our relatives are worse than you'd ever guess. Take the meerkat, tiny, fluffy, standing on its hind legs in every wildlife documentary you've ever half-watched. Meerkats are, statistically, the most murderous mammal we've ever studied. Almost 1 in 5 of them dies at the paws of another meerkat. So much for cute. So what do the deadliest species have in common? 2 things. They live in groups, and they hold territory. Wolves, lions, chimpanzees, and one upright ape that did both. Almost every killing in the ancient world came down to one of 3 things. The first is resources. Food, water, land, the stuff you die without. The second is mates, the chance to have children at all. And the third is protecting the children you've already got. And here's where it gets dark. That third one cuts both ways. Because one of the coldest strategies in all of nature is killing someone else's children. It's called infanticide, and it is not rare. In a survey of hundreds of mammal species, males were caught killing infants in nearly half of them. Watch a pride of lions when new males take over. They hunt down and kill every cub that isn't theirs. Brutal, but not random. With the cubs gone, the mothers stop nursing and can breed again, this time with the new males. The killing is arithmetic. A way to make your genes win and someone else's lose. And every one of those 3 reasons, food, mates, offspring, lives inside you right now. You feel them as hunger, as love, as the fierce, unthinking way you'd protect a child. They're not evil. They're the reasons anything is alive at all. Your ancestors just lived in a world where the shortest path to all 3 ran straight through another person's body. We don't have to guess whether ancient humans did this. We keep digging them up. Start with the oldest. Deep in a cave in northern Spain in a pit, archaeologists literally named the Pit of Bones. There's a skull. No name. Just a number. Cranium 17. It's around 430,000 years old. And it has 2 holes punched into the forehead side by side, almost identical. Not a fall. Not an animal. 2 deliberate blows from the same object, swung twice, from slightly different angles. It's the oldest murder we have ever found. Sit with that number a second. 400,000 years ago, long before people like you and me even existed, someone stood over another person and swung twice. 2 blows, same weapon. The second one only makes sense if the first didn't finish the job. That's not an accident. That's intent, fossilized. And it never stopped. Jump almost all the way to the present. Ötzi, the Iceman, frozen in the Alps around 5,300 years ago. For decades, everyone assumed he simply froze. Then they scanned him, and there it was an arrowhead buried in his shoulder from behind, slicing straight through an artery. He didn't get lost in a storm. He was shot in the back and left to die. But the ground holds worse than single deaths. At a place called Nataruk in Kenya, around 10,000 years ago, 27 people died together on the shore of a lagoon. Men, children, and a woman in the final weeks of pregnancy. Some of them had their wrists bound behind them before they died. Their skulls were crushed, arrow points still lodged in the bone. What looks like a massacre, a whole small community, wiped out by another group that wanted what they had. Think about that for a second. Not soldiers, families. And this was long before cities, before kings, before armies, just hunter-gatherers, doing to each other what we usually blame on civilization. And it wasn't a one-off. On the banks of the Nile, at a cemetery called Jebel Sahaba, lie 61 people. A recent restudy of their bones found something quietly horrifying. 2 out of every 3 of them carried the marks of violence. Some wounds healed, some fresh, spread across generations. This wasn't one terrible afternoon. It was a place where violence came back and back and back like weather. The deadliest animal in the ancient world wasn't a predator. It was a group of other humans. Remember the pattern. The deadliest species are the ones that live in groups and hold territory. That's us. Exactly. And when one group needed what another group had, they didn't negotiate. They raided, usually quietly, usually at dawn. Look at Talheim, in Germany. 34 people dumped in a pit around 7,000 years ago. When scientists studied their teeth, they found something that stops you cold. The adult women were missing from the dead. The attackers killed the men and the children and took the women. Because in that world, people were a resource too. You didn't just raid a group for its food. You raided it for the ability to make the next generation. Or Schöneck Kilianstätten, also in Germany. 26 bodies. And whoever did this didn't just kill them. They deliberately shattered the victims' lower legs, smashing the shins of people who were already dead or dying, breaking them so they could never stand, never walk, never come back. That's not fury. That's a message. Meant to be found. Terror. 5,000 years before anyone had a word for it. In some stretches of the Stone Age, as many as 1 in 7 people died from violence. Roughly 100 times the rate you live with today. Let that land. If your neighborhood ran on Stone Age odds, you'd bury someone you knew to violence almost every year. So fearing the stranger wasn't cruelty. It was survival. The humans who trusted the wrong stranger didn't become your ancestors. The careful ones did. The ones who kept the fire between them and the dark and watched the ridge line quietly all night. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wanted to smash something when you're stressed? Felt that hot flash to scream at the driver who cut you off? Pictured just for a second hurting someone who wronged you and felt a small, ugly part of you go, yes? That's not a flaw in you. That's the oldest part of you, still online. Now, scientists did once go looking for a violence gene. There's one they named MAOA, the tabloids, love calling it the warrior gene. But here's the honest version, and I'll only say it once. On its own, it does almost nothing. It only tilts a person toward aggression if they were badly abused as a child. It's a dial, not a destiny. So what you feel in traffic isn't a gene flipping on. It's a survival reflex that kept your ancestors alive, firing in a body that no longer needs it. Want to see the cold, planned version of that reflex? Look at our closest cousins. In 1974, the primatologist Jane Goodall watched a chimpanzee community split in 2, and then she watched one half hunt the other. Silent patrols along the border. Ambushes of lone males, always outnumbering them so the attackers stayed safe. Over 4 years, they wiped out all 7 adult males of the other group and swallowed their territory. This wasn't rage, it was a campaign. But bonobos, people say, the peaceful ape, they never kill. For years, that was the story. It's quietly falling apart. In 2024, researchers watched a group of bonobos attack a female from a rival community and seize her infant. The baby died. And a 2026 study found bonobos and chimps are, in the end, almost equally aggressive. There is no peaceful ape. The violence runs through the whole family tree, ours included. Still. So the difference between you and an ancient human isn't that you don't feel it. You feel all of it. You just don't act on it. The answer flips the whole story. The primatologist Richard Wrangham calls it self-domestication. Starting maybe 300,000 years ago, our species slowly did to itself what we would later do to wolves. We bred ourselves tamer, not weaker tamer. We turned down the hot hair-trigger rage while keeping the cold, planned kind. And you can read it in the bones. Our faces got shorter, our teeth smaller, our heavy brows softer. The exact same changes you see when a wild animal becomes a dog. But how do you breed rage out of a whole species? Here's the part that gives me chills. In a chimp group, one strong, violent bully can rule for years. Nobody can stop him, because chimps can't sit down and plot. They can't keep a secret. Then humans got language. And for the first time in the history of life on Earth, the weak could conspire. 2 people could slip away and whisper, "Tonight," while he sleeps. together. Suddenly, the biggest, meanest man in the group wasn't safe anymore because three smaller ones with a plan will beat him every time. The anthropologist Christopher Bohm gave this a name: the reverse dominance hierarchy. Instead of the strongest man ruling everyone else quietly teams up to rule the strongest man. Boehm found the same pattern all over the world, small groups using gossip, ridicule, exile, and when it came to it, execution, to take down the men who were too aggressive, too domineering, too dangerous to keep around. Think about what that does over 10,000 generations. The most violent men stop winning. They get talked about, ganged up on, and quietly removed, killed by their own people. And slowly, generation after generation, the genes for hot-tempered violence get weeded out of us. We didn't become gentle because someone taught us to be. We became gentle because, for 100,000 years, being a hot-headed bully was a good way to get yourself killed in your sleep. So here's the twist. The violence is what made us gentle. The same pressure that filled those mass graves is what bred the calm into you. You are the descendant of the killers who learned to kill the killers and then, slowly, learned to stop. Remember, we bred out the hot rage. The cold, planned, cooperative kind? We kept that one. We sharpened it. It's still sharp. And that's the unsettling truth about you. The exact wiring that lets you trust a stranger, work beside a stranger, build an entire city with millions of strangers, is the same wiring that can plan a killing without a single flicker of anger. You want to see that at full scale? The Second World War. Between 70 and 85 million people dead. Around 3% of every human being alive at the time. More than 100 countries pulled in. And for the first time in a major war, more civilians died than soldiers. Here's the thing that should chill you. None of that ran on rage. It ran on paperwork, on schedules, supply lines, and men who went home at night and kissed their kids. That was not the peaceful instinct breaking down. That was the cold instinct, organized, industrialized, aimed. Peace and the death camp grew from the same root. And even in peacetime, the drive didn't vanish. It just found new doors. Here's the strange part. We may actually have more kinds of violence now, not fewer. There's violence that leaves no mark at all, the slow, quiet control that can trap someone inside their own home for years, without a single bruise. There's violence baked into systems, into who quietly gets left behind before they're even born. And there's a brand new arena your ancestors never had to survive. The screen, where a stranger you will never meet, in a country you'll never visit, can try to take you apart in front of thousands. Your great-grandmother's ancestors feared the stranger on the ridge. You fear the stranger in the comments. Sam alarm. New ridge. Violence didn't disappear. It moved. From the body to the mind. From seconds to years. You may go your whole life without throwing a punch. But be honest, have you ever tried to make someone feel small? Picture it one more time. You, on a crowded street. A stranger brushes past your shoulder, and you feel nothing. No fear. No scan for weapons. Nothing at all. Now you know why. It isn't that the danger left the world. It's that 10,000 years of your ancestors were afraid, and were killed and slowly, painfully bred that fear down into something you can carry without even feeling its weight. You trust strangers because they couldn't. And that low hum of dread you feel scrolling the news at midnight, the sense that the whole world that's the old alarm, still wired into you, quietly firing in a world that mostly moved on without it. You're not broken. You're just carrying the ghost of a world that would have killed you. So the next time that alarm goes off, the flash of anger, the fear of the stranger, the urge you're a little ashamed of, you'll know exactly how old it is, and how far you've already come, and how much of it is still in there.